You would absolutely never guess that a tiny island inhabited by only 3 people hides the answers to all the macroeconomic problems in the world. Why are prices constantly escalating? Why do you work so hard but your salary never increases and you even get poorer day by day? Today, with just a fish, a net, and a crazy money printing machine, I will completely turn your perception of money upside down. The next 10 minutes could be even more useful than 4 years of studying economics in college. So ultimately, is the nature of poverty due to laziness, or are we being swept up in a giant monetary game? Let's watch until the end of the video to find the answer, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the Raw Fact Teller channel so we have more motivation to release more meaningful content. In some nameless hidden corner of the Pacific Ocean, there is an island so small that you can't even find it on a map. 3 natives live on the island: Abel, Baker, and Charlie. Their lives are terrifyingly simple. Every day, after waking up, each person can only catch exactly 1 fish with their bare hands, just enough to eat for the day, and then they go back to sleep. That loop continues endlessly. This is not a survival story on a deserted island, but the starting point for you to thoroughly understand inflation, capital accumulation, and even the real reason why your salary isn't increasing. That is the starting point of economics, a primitive economy with an output just enough to meet the needs of survival. You might feel this life is tragic, but if you replace the fish with money, this is the true picture of almost everyone today. Looking back at myself in the years right after graduation, I also used to work extremely hard for 8, even 10 hours a day. But at the end of the month, the salary I received was only just enough to pay for rent, utilities, and food. A recent statistic by financial institutions also points out that over 60% of young people in major cities are living paycheck to paycheck, with no savings to survive for more than 3 months if they lose their jobs, let alone achieve so-called financial freedom. Abel, Baker, and Charlie are actually facing the exact same situation as us: how to break the vicious cycle of working just to survive. The essence of poverty is not laziness, but the lack of tools to improve productivity. One day, Abel suddenly realized that if he didn't eat fish today, endured the hunger, and spent a whole day making a net, he would definitely catch more fish tomorrow. This idea sounded like a fantasy at the time. Who would be willing to starve for a day to make something without even knowing if it would work? But this is the very first step of all wealth accumulation: delaying consumption to create capital. Just like refusing weekend drinking gatherings to sit at home and learn a new foreign language or a programming skill, that is when you are enduring short-term discomfort to weave a net for your life. And Abel actually did just that. He starved, endured the mockery of his 2 friends, and spent a whole day weaving his first fishing net. At dawn the next day, while Baker and Charlie were still fumbling to catch fish with their bare hands in shallow water, Abel took his net to the deep water and easily caught 3 fish. This is the magical moment in economics when capital, the net, created a leap in productivity. More importantly, Abel now only needed to work 2 hours a day catching fish. The rest of the time he could rest or weave more nets. A week later, Abel had 3 nets and could catch 9 fish a day. Now he faced a completely new problem: too many fish. If he couldn't eat them all, they would go bad. So he made a decision that changed the fate of the island, lending the surplus fish to Baker and Charlie, but requiring them to pay back 1 extra fish upon return. This is the origin of interest. After borrowing the fish, Baker and Charlie also started making their own nets. 3 months later, the island's fish catch soared from 3 to 18 fish a day. The size of the economy expanded 6-fold. No one had to work a single second longer. It was all thanks to the utilization of capital tools and a rational borrowing system. This story shows us that the core of economic growth is not working yourself to death, but creating and using capital tools. Today's smartphone is exactly our fishing net. Think about it. An ordinary person just needs to hold a phone to contact customers, process orders, and learn new skills, things that 20 years ago would have required a whole team to accomplish. But the reality is extremely sad. User behavior reports indicate that on average, each person spends over 7 hours a day on internet-connected electronic devices, but more than 80% of that time is spent mindlessly scrolling through short entertainment videos and social media, rather than improving their own productivity. We are holding the most miraculous fishing net of humanity in our hands, but we are only using it for sightseeing. As fishing nets multiplied, fish on the island became abundant. Using fish for direct trading became troublesome because fish easily rotted and were hard to carry. Therefore, everyone agreed to use fish notes as a medium of exchange, with 1 note equivalent to 1 fresh fish. This is the birth of money, initially created to facilitate trading. But the joy was short-lived. The village elders on the island discovered a shortcut. They figured that if they secretly printed a few more fish notes, they could buy more things without having to go fishing. So they started issuing an amount of notes that far exceeded the actual fish catch. In the short term, it seemed like everyone became wealthier. Everyone had a lot of money in their hands and could buy more goods. But very quickly, a strange phenomenon occurred. The fish notes kept increasing, but the amount of goods did not, and prices began to skyrocket. Initially, one note could buy a large fish. Then it turned into only buying half a fish, and eventually, it couldn't even buy a small fish. This is the cruel truth about inflation. When the money supply exceeds actual productivity, your money depreciates. Today, we are facing the exact same problem. Why did a bowl of beef pho cost only $20,000 10 years ago, but now it's up to $50,000 or even $60,000? Not because the bowl of pho is tastier, nor because it's bigger, but because your money is no longer as valuable as before. Inflation is like an invisible thief, picking a little money out of your wallet every day without you even knowing it. The true story of the Republic of Nauru is a vivid example. This Pacific island nation struck it rich overnight in the 1980s by exporting guano fossils, with a per capita income surpassing even the United States. But they didn't do what Abel did, which was to use wealth to create new productivity. Instead, they spent and printed money madly. As a result, in less than 20 years, the inflation rate hit 300%, their currency turned into scrap paper, and their GDP per capita plummeted from $100,000 to just $2,000. This is the inevitable outcome of abandoning the real economy and getting bogged down in the monetary game. The story on the small island continues. When the fish notes depreciated, people started losing faith and rushed to demand exchanging them back for real fish. The elders panicked, so they came up with a new trick, establishing the Fish Island Reserve Bank and issuing new reserve notes while declaring that these notes were backed by high-quality assets on the island. But in reality, those assets were just that pile of fish about to rot. To make people believe in the value of the new currency, they started building lavish palaces and throwing grand parties to create a false sense of prosperity. They even invented a theory to stimulate the economy, that as long as they printed more money and encouraged people to consume, the economy would grow. This is exactly the economic magic trick that many governments today are still using. Most fatally, the elders started interfering with interest rates. They said that only low interest rates could spur borrowing and investment, so they forcibly lowered the lending interest rate from 10% to just 1%. As a result, ordinary citizens began borrowing crazily. They didn't borrow to make fishing nets, but to buy bigger houses and more luxurious canoes. I still vividly remember the pandemic period a few years ago when interest rates dropped sharply and cheap money flooded the market. All my neighbors and friends around me rushed into speculating on real estate or crypto, buying deserted plots of land subdivided for sale in the hope of changing their lives overnight. At that time, if a real businessman applied for a loan to expand their production workshop, the bank might reject it as high risk. Conversely, banks preferred lending to people buying luxury villas because real estate, inflated by mob mentality, was believed to always go up in price. This is the absolute worst misallocation of resources. When the government intervenes in the market, capital flows into speculative sectors instead of productive sectors that create real value. Prosperity built on sand is always fleeting. When the amount of reserve notes issued became 10 times the actual fish catch, one smart islander started using the notes to massively exchange for real fish and then secretly transported them to other islands. When this news spread, it caused a massive bank run. Everyone wanted to exchange those flimsy, scrap paper-like notes for real fish. But there weren't that many fish in the bank. The elders were forced to declare a 90% devaluation of the currency. Overnight, the people's savings vanished into thin air. Those who had borrowed money to buy villas bitterly realized that their debt hadn't decreased at all while their income was in free fall. Unemployment soared, and the once prosperous island fell into chaos. That is exactly a microcosm of cyclical financial crises like the 2008 global financial crisis. The tragedy of Nauru played out once again on a much larger scale. When resources dried up, the Nauruan government didn't choose the painful transition to rebuild its productive capacity. Instead, it printed more money and took on more foreign debt. By 2025, their foreign debt had reached astronomical, unpayable figures, turning the country into an impoverished place living on international aid. But after the collapse, the islanders began to awaken and reflect on where exactly they went wrong. They realized that the essence of economics is production, not consumption. The source of wealth is creation, not printing money. So a group of young people started doing what Abel did back in the day, scrimping and saving to make nets, refusing frivolous consumer debt, and focusing on improving productivity. A young man discovered that the island's climate was very suitable for growing a drought-resistant fruit tree. He spent 3 years crossbreeding it to yield a high-productivity fruit. Not only did it solve the food problem, but he also used it to trade for essential tools from other islands. This is the true face of solid economic recovery, relying on real demand to create real value. The country of Iceland today is a modern testament to this success. During the 2008 crisis, Iceland's banking system collapsed and its currency depreciated severely, but they didn't choose to print money recklessly to save themselves. They let the banks go bankrupt, cut public spending, and focused all their efforts on developing tourism and fisheries, economic sectors that actually generate cash flow. 10 years later, their economic growth rate had surpassed the European Union average, making them one of the fastest and most sustainably recovering nations. From the stories above, the biggest lesson we need to realize is to always clearly distinguish between money and wealth. Money is merely a tool for exchange. Real wealth is your ability to create value. Next, persistently save and invest in productive assets. Just like Abel, use your money to buy fishing nets that help you improve productivity. Those could be professional skills, modern working tools, or high-quality courses. Besides that, always stay alert and vigilant to macroeconomic fluctuations. When you hear terms like quantitative easing or economic stimulus packages, understand that the money in your pocket is at risk of being diluted. And a vital principle is to absolutely never borrow to serve luxurious consumer pleasures. Only loans used to buy assets capable of generating cash flow or sustainably increasing in value are good debts. Any other impulsive consumer loan is financial suicide. Economics is actually very simple, just like the story on that small island. No matter how complex and intertwined the global economy is, the fundamental principle never changes. Production creates value, saving accumulates capital, and investment helps improve productivity. Consumption is just the end result, not the cause of prosperity. Today, you might be exactly the Abel of 20 years ago, standing at a crossroads in life. Will you continue to catch fish with your bare hands every day just to scrape by, or endure short-term hardship and struggle to forge a sturdy fishing net for yourself? The choice you make today will determine your entire financial situation for the next 10 years. Economic crises are not unexpected accidents, but inevitable laws. When the majority of people forget the wisdom of accumulation and immerse themselves in the vortex of consumption and borrowing, a crisis will strike. But a crisis is also a golden opportunity to reset the order. Just like the young people rebuilding their homeland on the island, the collapse gave them the foundation to rebuild from scratch more solidly. Don't let yourself be swept away in the financial storm. Stop abusing credit cards immediately to buy flashy liabilities just to satisfy fleeting emotions and show off on social media. Instead, courageously accept short-term hunger, sacrificing immediate entertainment pleasures to invest time and money into honing your expertise, learning new mindsets, or building a second stream of income. Only when you shift yourself from the stance of a consumer to the position of a producer, creating value, will you truly hold sustainable financial autonomy in your hands. The economic tide will ebb and flow, but those standing firm on the rock will never be submerged. And that sturdiest rock is your core competency and sharp mindset. In your opinion, what is the most valuable fishing net you are building for your future right now? An in-depth skill, a small business model, or a daily habit of self-study? Please politely leave your perspective in the comments section so everyone can discuss and learn from each other. If you find this video valuable and helpful in changing your mindset, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the Raw Fact Teller channel, as well as share this video with those who need it. Your enthusiastic support is our greatest source of energy to continue releasing more insightful and meaningful analytical content. Goodbye, and see you next time.